There are women board members there, and when we sometimes discuss, I find that women, so one is you've earned that seat at the table, okay? So there is an element of earning, which is right, and it's not just the diversity or token diversity, but it's a seat at the table. So there is a need to want to give back a little bit more, and I think Bhaskar alluded to that earlier, that they reach out, they are willing to chair committees, they're willing to go beyond the mandatory quarter-on-quarter meeting and engage with management in between the meetings. So there is that wanting to do a little bit more, which I am seeing, and it's not just a gender thing, but I see a lot of it in the women directors. So I think to that point, there is that wanting to contribute. Then I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you. Yeah.
For creative leadership. This is a question I've been thinking about since a long time, maybe months, and finally I have a male advocate to ask this.
Male advocate to ask it to.
See, in this whole gender balance and the whole debate, we are making a big deal out of it. I do also believe so. My question is, what is in it for men? For organizations, I see the diversity agenda is very clear and there are multiple, it's set. We don't have to question that. For women, as a woman, I see I'm ambitious. I want to give at home and I want to give at work. Thankfully, I have a support system. For men, I don't know what's in it for them. I can see that maybe you would have a gender balanced leadership pipeline, but you would also need to balance at work and maybe help, at home a lot more. I'm assuming no one would want to do that, hence men will not allow it. That's my deep down fear. I don't know if you can speak for the community, but just generally, do you think this is valid?
Your question is what's in it for men to have
allow women to come forth.
Women in the board.
To allow women to come forth and hensefully have enough women in the pipeline for senior positions and the board.
Well, the only way to answer this question is as a professional. Yes. And as a professional, I find that there is a certain contribution as a woman that she makes to corporate well-being, and to that extent my well-being. Maybe when I was, when I was very junior, maybe I didn't feel so, because I came up the sales route and therefore it was all male and all that. But as one grew into marketing, you realize the value that they bring, the insights, the consumer insights they brought to the table in marketing, in advertising, in retailing, and therefore you tended to learn and said, it is a matlabi thing, it's good to have this person on your team. Because then the total value goes up, therefore, I think that as a professional, I have found a certain benefit. And therefore, that has got ingrained in a way, I don't know, otherwise, if you were to look at, to be fair to men, I think they would treat the woman as a man themselves. If there's professional value addition, then you would like to have women rather than only men on the board, I mean, at least some percentage.
Yes. Just to, I'm not trying to push, I'm just thinking.
Please do push. You don't have to say, I'm not trying to push and then push.
See, it's a change in power dynamic, right?
Yeah.
In organizations, in decisions being made, and possibly also at home.
Yes.
Right? You may not want to comment on the home front, but I think that's a very important piece for women to guilt-free go out there also. Do you sense any rumors in the male fraternity that, I don't want this power dynamic to be changed? Is there a fear?
Very empowered women at home. So I don't think.
I'm the middle man in my family with one elder sister and a younger sister. So, the women are like,
And daughter also very empowered. Wife also very power to you.
So, but no, I just can't see this. There are, let me be uncharitable to manufacturing companies, okay? I think those companies which have come up the hardcore manufacturing route, you know, and I look at two companies, Tata Steel, Bosch. I sit on the Bosch board, which are very, I mean, manufacturing is male, you know, and therefore the DNA of these companies is about getting things done in a certain male manner, you know, repairing the machine or getting, you know, everything going. Therefore, the whole business is like that. Now, there would be a feeling, what will a woman come and do in this? At best, HR, you know, that is the kind of.
And, to that point, I'm just sorry to interrupt. I started my career in Bosch.
Yeah, that's why I thought.
You know, so, and I was the first lady management trainee. And to the point that, and I was in HR, but, you know, the unions would never negotiate with a woman on the table. So, and the top job went always to an IR experienced guy. So the biases were huge 30 years ago. We had one toilet for women in the whole building. Every floor had toilets for men. So, you know, there were all these kind of biases. So as, you know, just to the point on manufacturing.
But we have at the other extreme, a retail business, not business, we have large number of retail stores, 1,500 or so. And there it's large number of women, okay? But there again I'm seeing the store managers are men, you know. So I think it has something to do with this ambition that you spoke about. At the other, on the manufacturing side, we have a lot of women, but not one of them has stood for Union General Election as president. Because I think they qualify, but they don't want to, okay. On this side, I think, Raj, there are more women in retail than men, right? In ours. I don't know whether there's any store manager, maybe one in, maybe 5%. Because in that job again, they think we are serving the customer and we are not meant for leadership roles. So it is also to do with the, you know, I think it's only in the corporate functions that women play that kind of role and are able to move up faster. And so.
Something to that ambition point also, sit down. Something to that ambition point also, if you take the software services industry,
Correct.
it's 40-45% at least at junior levels are women. But if I took the Twitch companies, which is Tata, Wipro, Infosys, Tech Mahindra, Cognizant, HCL, and if I look to the head, just look at HR function. HR is all women in many of these places. But look at the head of HR. In all these Twitch companies, there's not one woman. So I'm looking at software services, which has a large percentage. I'm looking at HR, which has a very large percentage. And then I'm looking at these Twitch companies and saying, which of them has a head of HR, which is a woman? And there is not one now. Huh? Yeah, but let's look at it right now. So there's nobody, right? So I don't know. It's to that point, maybe, are they opting out? Are they saying it's transferable? Is it the pressure? Is it some kind of a glass ceiling?
Could be. I mean, we have a very senior person in TCS, for example, you know, but it's not the head, not the number one role. And I don't know, I think there is maybe a wrong notion in companies that when you have to get the top job, then you have to be business-like. And maybe women are not business-like. It could be. I'm just guessing that the HR head also has to have a business orientation, not just a human orientation.
Which ladies don't have.
Which it is assumed that ladies don't have. But today business is not about, we all know now, I think 10 years from now it's going to be strongly about community, people, social, green, apart from the numbers that you generate. Of course, the numbers that you generate are going to be as important as today, but other things are going to get very important. And there I think women will score more, CSR and so on. So or ethical organizations, that itself is going to be important, get more. So I think the nature of the organization will change. The nature of the corporation will change.
I'll come back to you. There's somebody there waiting for, yeah.
Thanks. It's a very general, neutral question. I want to know what are the 3 top competencies you look for when you are appointing directors? That's the first part. And the second part is, out of these 3 or 5 top competencies, where do you think women are good at, and which are the others probably they need to build on? Because if we want to have many more women take up leadership positions, we should understand what is needed and where are the gaps that we need to fill.
Thank you. That's a great question.
You want to start? You're the BNRC chair. Because, okay, let me start with having kept the trivial things out, because in our board we have things like age and all that. How many years you can serve on the board, etc. But the first need is that the competency has to match the gap that we are looking for. We won't go out looking for a general director. It has to be, like I just said, what is the future and what is that competency that we need to, either to face a threat or to leverage an opportunity. So that, having said that, I think in general, we look for perspective, a broad perspective of business, not the business that we are in. Obviously, knowledge of the business nobody will have. Some may end up having by chance, but does the person bring perspective, which is what you're looking for in a board. Unfortunately, there are boards which end up getting into the nitty-gritty of business and therefore operational details, which then you're stepping on management's, in management's territory. So perspective, which means strategic, future. The second is, I think I would certainly be collegial, you should be able to, team player, has to be a team, because, and I can say this consistently across all the boards, a board member is different from the board. As a board, you will take a decision which is collective, but as an individual, you will have certain views. Therefore, you have to be able to live with the decision of the board, despite the fact that you may have views which are differing from the rest of the members of the board. And that is what, game of cricket or any game is like that, So team playing is very important. So perspective, team player, and I would say courage of conviction. That is, you should be able to articulate, because if you haven't done that, then you're being irresponsible. Okay? And on that third count, I think women score better. So you asked for 3, I gave you 3.
I just want to augment it with one or two more points. One is that I think it's also important that the person engages, finds enough time for the board than just appearing for the quarterly meeting. Because it's, while you don't at all want to co-create strategy, and strategy is the management's role, you want to partner between board meetings. So I would also look for that ability to give their best. The second thing is something else that Bhaskar said initially, that you have to have the competency. So you also have to be visible as having that competency. And if you're looking today, for example, at SMAC or digital or one of these, have you, and this is, I think, a problem today, because once this legislation has come in, there are many sponsors and people who have worked on creating groups of women who are ready to get onto boards. And now one of the grouses that those women has is that nobody is coming and approaching us, right? But it's not going to be anybody coming to approach you. You have to carve a niche for yourself such that if that competency requirement is there in the board, your name stands out. And I think women have to invest in doing that for themselves, which they don't do. So just because you've been certified by A or B or this organization or the other, it's not enough. You have to become visible. And that calls for balancing your time, that calls for reprioritizing your priorities, for delegating downwards so that you get clearer bandwidth, all of those issues so that you become visible. The other thing is that Deloitte, since they are the knowledge partners, they did a very interesting experiment on diversity some years ago. And it's not to the board, but it's to partner level. They found that while they were recruiting women, almost 50-50 at entry level in the US, when it came time for partner selection, the numbers dwindled down to 1:3. That means 25%. So everybody thought it was the mommy track that actually let women off the hook. But it was not the mommy track. When they analyzed, they found out that what partners they were looking for were people in the new age industries. Whereas women were getting allocated to the traditional industries. Men were getting allocated to sunrise industries. So you have to be cognizant of the kind of skill you need, the kind of skills that companies will be looking for, and make sure you are resilient in that space. Yeah, Meenal.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Meenal from Schneider. So my question is specific to Titan. You spoke earlier about how you see when you have women leaders in the board, they become role models for executives in the organization. So are there any specific mechanisms or processes that you've created in Titan for these women in the board to engage with your executives in the organization?
Yes. Sorry. But those are not meant only for women. So we have specific, some are official committees, like the CSR committee of the board, the BNR ethics committee of the board, as well as the BNRC, which is the nomination and remuneration committee. First of all, are chaired by, they have women members or are chaired by women. Now, when they officially, therefore, engage with the management when the CSR strategy is developed and so on. Now, on these committees, there are senior women. Okay, so that's how it starts. But other than that, the more important ones are where offsites or where there are certain programs developing strategy, which is not, while it's a board agenda, but it's done not in a board meeting, it is done off-site or as a separate initiative, where management is exposed to these people. And if you have senior enough women, there is no specific women's exposure to these people. But these women come forward. Since they reach out, there is a great opportunity. And because they reach out, the rest of the women, see how much they are contributing. And therefore, that's the point about the role model, because they are adding value to cut-off age, the other way around, not the starting point, but the closing point. Because this whole, let's say, startup, the understanding of that culture is only in that society, let us say. Now, of course, I think the jury is still out, as in, like guys like us talk about these guys are after valuation, whereas we are after value creation. These are all nice words to, we create value, those guys are about valuation. And therefore, what is it? Find the greater fool or something, no? The guy who will buy you out and so on. Those are the words that are common in this. Now that is understood, and we are being unfair to those kinds of companies. So going forward, irrespective of whether you're a startup or a large corporation which is matured, I think having younger people in responsible positions, whether it's board or, I can't really think, but it is important to have younger people who bring new thinking and who are trained in that area. But at the same time, that, while I can't imagine that a corporation can significantly change, because finally we don't one of the things that good large companies do is realize that 10 hours or 12 hours of your day you spend with the company. 8 hours inside, 2 hours going to work or whatever, 1.5 hours, 1.5 hours. And they're sensitive about, large companies create a culture within where when you come to work, you feel happy. I mean, your whatever, interiors, the culture, encourage, the society being inside. I find that, and this is again anecdotal, in these new companies, it is all about getting the job done, and maybe, I'm not talking about Google and Facebook, I'm talking about the startups. And I find people who walked out, he's the guy who listens to these conversations, he's our head of HR, they want to come back. So after all that, it's no fun. There's no peer you can talk to, there's nobody across the table you can walk across and have a chat, have a cup of coffee. You're on the treadmill all the time. Yeah, I made a choice, but now I realize, I'm not saying everybody's coming back. So creating that kind of culture, even in these startups are great, nobody's questioning the need for them, but that it's not only about valuation, or it's not only about bringing your competence to work. You're walking into work as a human being. Therefore, work is also about many things that happen. And, all this push about work from home, we should permit all that.